She was dumped for being poor, only to be discovered as the billionaire's daughter. The scent of fresh coffee floated through the little shop, blending with low chatter and the soft clink of mugs. It wasn't fancy, just a small, warm place with worn chairs and a quiet charm, but it always felt special to Maya Brooks and Caleb Reed. They used to camp out here on Saturdays, laughing over cheap lattes and sketching big plans they swore they'd reach together. Today, though, everything felt off. The room seemed colder, the distance between them wider than the small table. Maya sat across from Caleb, eyes bright with hope. She leaned forward, fingers tight on the edge of the table, like she was holding on to a ledge. "I got the offer, Caleb," she said, breathless. "It's entry level, but it's real. I can start saving. Give it a few years, and maybe we—" He cut her off with a long sigh. His fingers drummed a bored rhythm on the wood. No smile, no warmth. Her heart dipped. "What's wrong?" she asked, voice soft. He looked away toward the window, as if searching for the right excuse in the glass. After a heavy pause, he spoke, flat and distant. "Maya, we need to talk." Something in his tone tightened her chest. "Okay," she said, trying to sound steady. "What is it?" He exhaled sharply, but still wouldn't meet her eyes. "We're not working." She blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" He finally looked at her, and the kindness she knew wasn't there. His eyes were cold. "I mean, we should break up." For a heartbeat, she forgot how to breathe. Words tumbled in her head, without shape. "Caleb, where is this coming from? Last week you told me you loved me." He gave a small, bitter laugh. "Love? Let's be real. You're still in that tiny studio. Scraping by. You think that's enough?" Maya's hands trembled around her cup. "We said we'd build together. Money isn't everything. We have us. That matters." He chuckled again, sharp and smug. That's what broke people tell themselves. The words slapped harder than a hand. He tapped his foot, impatient. "I'm tired, Maya. I don't want to struggle forever. I want more than this small life." Tears stung, but she kept them back. "So that's it? Because I'm not rich, you throw us away?" He gave her a look that felt like pity. "I'm being honest. You should be grateful for that." Before she could answer, a voice slid in like a knife. "Caleb, there you are." Maya turned to see a woman glide toward them, Ava Sterling. Everything about her sparkled. Glossy hair, a fitted designer dress, nails like glass, a bracelet that probably cost more than Maya made all year. Ava placed a possessive hand on Caleb's shoulder and didn't even glance at Maya. "Ready, babe?" Drivers outside. The word babe burned. Maya stared at Caleb, stunned. "You're leaving me for her?" He stood, smoothing his jacket as if the talk was already over. No shame, just a thin smile. "This is the life I want, Maya," he said. Then he twisted the knife. "Find someone more at your level." Her breath hitched. Ava finally looked over, head tilted, mouth curved in a slow, mocking smile. "Don't take it personal, sweetheart. Some people stay ordinary." Caleb slipped his arm around Ava's waist, turned his back on the woman he once promised forever, and walked out into a sleek black car. The door thudded shut, and the noise of the cafe blurred to a far hum. Maya sat frozen, fingers locked around her cooling cup. She refused to cry here. She wouldn't give them that. The night air bit her cheeks as she wandered through dim streets, the words echoing. Some people are just meant to stay ordinary. She had given him everything, her trust, her faith, her steady support, only to be tossed aside like she didn't count. In her little apartment, she shut the door and fell face first onto the bed. The day crashed over her, and for the first time in a long time, she let the tears come. But morning light is stubborn. It crept across the floorboards and over her face, and she made a choice. This would not break her. She washed her face, tied her hair back, and went to work. Her job wasn't fancy, assisting a small firm, but she treated it like it mattered. She arrived early, stayed late, and took every task seriously. While others gossiped or stretched their breaks, Maya dug into the basics. Business terms, clean reports, clear emails. She read about strategy during lunch, watched how managers negotiated, and asked quiet questions when it wouldn't bother anyone. She learned to listen more than she spoke. Effort leaves footprints. One evening, long after most lights had gone dark, a voice broke the silence. "You're here again." She looked up to see Mr. Whitaker, the vice president, a man in his mid-50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "I just wanted to make sure the draft was right," she said. He nodded and walked to her desk. "Let's see it." She handed over the report and held her breath. He read in silence, flipping pages. Finally, he said, "This is good. Better than what I see from some seniors." Her eyes widened. "Really?" He smirked. "You sound surprised. I've been watching. You work harder than anyone here." He studied her a moment more. "You ever think about doing more than calendar invites and coffee runs?" She hesitated. "I want to. I just don't have connections or the right background." He scoffed. "Talent beats background. If you're willing to learn, I'll teach." Her heart thudded. This was the door she'd prayed for. "I won't waste it," she said. "Good," he replied. "Let's see what you can do." Everything shifted after that. Mr. Whitaker became more than a boss. He was a guide. He showed her how to prep for meetings, how to read a room, when to speak and when to wait. He taught her analyze market trends without getting fooled by noise, to build a clear deck, to push back politely but firmly under pressure. He stayed calm and expected the same from her. She soaked it all in. Time moved. The quiet assistant people, ignored, became someone no one overlooked. Maya earned promotions, then bigger projects, then a team. Folks who once brushed past her now asked for a minute of her time. Some praised her to her face. Some whispered with envy. She didn't gloat, and she didn't chase revenge. She kept her head down, did the work, and let the results speak. Across town, Caleb lived in a world he thought he wanted. Ava's penthouse was a glass box in the sky, with the city spread out like a map, designer furniture in every corner, a scent of expensive perfume in the air, closets full of clothes he hadn't paid for. She took him to charity galas and rooftop parties. Tailored suits replaced his old jackets. At first, he believed he'd won. No more rent panic. No more cheap dinners. He was finally living the dream, or so he told himself. The cracks showed fast. "You're wearing that?" Ava's voice sliced through the room. He looked down at the jacket she'd bought. "What's wrong with it?" She sighed and sifted through a jewelry box. "It's last season. I'm not having people think I let my boyfriend look dated." He clenched his jaw and stayed quiet. Little jabs turned into constant control. At events, Ava treated him like an accessory. "This is my Caleb." She would purr, never just Caleb. When he talked too much, her hand on his arm told him to stop. If he offered an idea she didn't like, she laughed, light and cruel. "Oh, honey, you're adorable when you try to sound smart." He told himself it didn't matter. It did. One night over dinner, she swirled her wine. "You should start a business." His eyes lit. "I've been thinking about that. I have a few." She rolled her eyes. "Not like that. Something easy. Low effort. My father can fund it." His stomach turned. "I don't want your dad's money. I want to build something myself." She laughed, soft but cutting. "Sweetheart, some people are meant to relax, not grind." The words hit him like a mirror. He had said almost the same thing to Maya. The months wore him down. The glamour dulled. Old friends stopped calling. They saw him as Ava's boyfriend and nothing else. He tried to use her connections to move ahead, but no one took him seriously. Behind the nice suits, he felt empty and small. Alone in the penthouse, he watched Ava post another perfect snapshot and felt the truth land. He had traded love for status, and somehow lost both. 3 years after that cafe scene, a ballroom glittered under crystal light. The city's power players filled the space. Investors, founders, sharp climbers. Caleb stood by the bar, swirling his drink and pretending to belong. Even the sparkle bored him now. Then he saw her. For a second he thought he'd imagined it. The shy girl in thrift store dresses was gone. In her place stood Maya, calm, polished, undeniable. A sleek gown, smooth hair, light makeup that highlighted her features without shouting. But it wasn't the clothes. It was her presence. People turned when she walked by. They listened when she spoke. She moved with quiet certainty. The kind that doesn't beg for attention because it already has a room. His breath caught. This wasn't just Maya. This was Maya Brooks, the rising executive everyone whispered about, and he had thrown her away. He watched as she navigated the crowd, speaking with leaders he'd only read about. Heads nodded when she made a point. Smiles lingered after she left the circle. 3 years ago, he had looked down on her. Now he could not reach where she stood. His grip tightened around his glass. Beside him, Ava sniffed. Her? People act like she's special because she got lucky. He barely heard her. His mind spun, words piling up with nowhere to go. He needed to speak to Maya, to say something that could fix what he had broken. Across the room, her eyes met his. Time paused. Recognition flashed. And then nothing. No anger. No longing. She looked through him like he was a stranger. The echo of his own choices rang in his ears. When she headed for the exit, he acted without thinking. Maya. She paused, not turning. He rushed forward, reaching out. Maya, wait. She faced him at last. Up close, she was even more striking. But what unsettled him most was her calm. No hate, no hurt, just distance. Caleb, she said, smooth and professional. It's been a while. He swallowed. Yeah, you look different. A small smile touched her lips. People change. He let out a shaky laugh. Yeah, I can tell. He opened his mouth to apologize, but man stepped to Maya's side. Tall, sharp suit, steady eyes. Ready to go? He asked kindly, touching the small of her back. The car is here. Something cracked inside Caleb. She had moved on. He was only a past mistake. Maya glanced at him one last time, face unreadable. Then she turned and left with the other man, disappearing into the night while the chandelier light flickered on his empty glass. Sleep didn't help. He couldn't stop replaying the way she looked at him, like he no longer mattered and never really had. The next day, he sat at his desk and stared at a spreadsheet that refused to mean anything. On impulse, he typed her name into a search bar. Maya Brooks. Stories filled the screen. Rising star reshapes the market. From assistant to leader, how she did it. Then a headline punched the air from his lungs. Billionaire Richard Hale reunites with hidden daughter Maya. Caleb froze. Richard Hale. The Richard Hale, legendary head of Hale Industries. The kind of tycoon his own firm had been trying to court for years. He clicked the article. It said that after years of searching, Richard Hale had found his estranged daughter, Maya. She had built her career without his money and refused to take a shortcut. He admired her grit and was working to rebuild their relationship in private. Caleb leaned back, pulse racing. Maya wasn't just successful, she was powerful. She wasn't just a rising name. She was the heir to an empire. He had mocked her dreams and walked away. Now she stood at the peak without him. A sick feeling rolled through him. Did she always know and hide it? Or did life twist after he left? Maybe it didn't matter. The truth was simple. He lost her. Not only the woman who loved him, but the one person who could have changed his path for the better. For the first time, Caleb felt small in a way that didn't go away when he put on a suit. He had chased glitter with Ava and found out it was glass. When he stopped being useful, she treated him like a broken accessory. Maya built something real and untouchable. Her name, her work, her peace. Fear crept in. He needed to see her, to apologize, to ask for a second chance. Maybe, just maybe, he could fix a little piece of what he had ruined. But deep down, he already knew Maya Hale no longer needed him. The thought terrified him more than anything. He stood on the sidewalk outside Hale Industries, palms sweaty even in the cool morning air. It had taken weeks to get a meeting. She didn't answer late-night texts anymore. She didn't pick up calls from unknown numbers. She had gatekeepers now, calendars that were planned down to the minute. Today was a shot. He straightened his tie, showed his ID to the front desk, rode the quiet elevator up, and stepped into her office. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows behind a sleek mahogany desk. She sat there, poised in a fitted black dress, her face calm and unreadable. "Caleb," she said, and the way she said his name made something deep inside him ache. "I wasn't sure you'd agree to see me," he admitted. She leaned back, fingers laced. "I was curious." No warmth, no bitterness, only cool curiosity. Somehow that hurt more than anger. He swallowed. "I don't deserve this meeting, but I needed to see you." She didn't fill the silence for him. He rushed on. "I was wrong. About everything." Still she waited. Her steady eyes made him feel small again, smaller than he'd felt in years. He took a breath. "When I left, I thought I was choosing the smart path. I thought status and money were what mattered. I was a fool." His voice cracked. "You were the best part of my life, and I threw you away." She didn't flinch. "Yes," she said. He had braced for anger or a cutting remark. Her simple agreement, spoken so plainly, hit harder. "I regret it," he said. "Every day." He stepped closer. "I see you now, and I know I made the worst mistake." She let out a quiet breath. "What do you want, Caleb?" "A second chance." For the first time, her expression shifted, a tiny flicker of amusement. "A second chance," she repeated, like she was trying out a phrase from a language she no longer spoke. "Yes," he said quickly. "I don't deserve it, but please let me show you I've changed." She rose and came around the desk, standing a few feet from him. "You say you regret it," she said, head tilted. "You say you've grown. Tell me this. If I were still the girl in that small cafe, counting every dollar, would you be here?" His mouth opened. No sound came out. She smiled, but not with warmth. It was a quiet smile of someone who has finally learned the lesson life kept trying to give. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have chosen money over me." The ground seemed to tilt. "Maya, please," he whispered. "Let me prove it. I can change." She studied him for a long moment, then did the one thing he never expected. She laughed, soft, almost pitying. "Caleb," she said, shaking her head, "I don't love you anymore." He sucked in a breath. "You are a lesson," she continued, firm and even, "one I learned well, and I've moved on." His knees weakened. Pride cracked. He dropped to the floor before he could stop himself. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but..." She stepped back. "Don't beg. It's not dignified." His eyes burned, but he blinked the tears away. She turned toward the door. "We're done here." He lurched to his feet. "Maya, please." She paused, glanced over her shoulder. "This is the last time we will speak," she said softly. "Goodbye, Caleb." And she was gone, leaving him in a room that suddenly felt too bright, too quiet, and far too big. Caleb stood in the center of Ava Sterling's glass-walled living room, staring at the glow of his phone like it might rewrite the past if he scrolled hard enough. Article after article about Maya Hale stacked up on the screen, until Ava's voice cut through the quiet like a blade. "So it's true." He looked up to find her by the door, arms folded, expression tight with anger that sparkled more than her diamonds. "Not now, Ava," he muttered, but she strode forward and thrust her own phone at him. There he was, captured in crisp pixels, walking out of Hale Industries like a man with something to hide. "You really thought I wouldn't hear that you crawled back to your ex?" she said, each word sharp. He straightened, tired and raw. "She's not pathetic," he snapped when Ava tossed an insult out with a bitter laugh. And a flash of heat in her eyes told him he'd finally said the one thing she wouldn't forgive. "So you beg her to take you back," Ava said, her voice going cold and glossy. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. "Wow," she added, almost amused. "You are exactly what people said. Someone who uses others to climb." He dragged a hand over his face. "I don't want to fight." "Well, I do," she shot back, chin lifted. "Because I refuse to be embarrassed by a man chasing a woman who doesn't even want him." She took a breath, smile sharp as a paper cut. "You thought you could coast on my lifestyle forever. Let's see how you manage without me." The words hit with finality he could feel in his bones. "Ava," he started, but her palm flicked up to silence him as she turned and dialed. "Security," she said sweetly into the phone. "I need someone escorted out of my apartment within 30 minutes. The bottom dropped out of his stomach. It was happening, and there was no pause button. The next hour blurred. A suitcase thrown together. A pair of guards with stiff faces, an elevator ride that felt like a fall, the city air colder than before. By sunset, Caleb had no penthouse, no high-end closet, no polished parties. The friends who had once clapped him on the back didn't reply to his messages now that he wasn't Ava's plus one. Job leads dried up fast because no one respected a man who had worn borrowed status like armor. Savings trickled away, and he ended up in a shabby apartment that smelled faintly of damp plaster, exactly the kind of place he'd once mocked, and now the only roof he could keep over his head. His shoes were scuffed, his shirts wrinkled not by choice, but because laundromats cost money. He skipped meals without calling it that, telling himself he wasn't hungry. Pride thinned out like the soles of his shoes. One night, he drifted past a glowing restaurant where music and laughter spilled onto the sidewalk, a little slice of warmth he couldn't afford. Through the wide front window, he saw her, Maya, lit by golden chandeliers, posture straight, eyes bright. Across from her sat a tall, well-dressed man with easy confidence, the kind that didn't have to announce itself. When the man reached for her hand, she didn't pull away. Her smile was gentle and sure, the kind of smile Caleb had once lived for. He turned away fast, breath catching, and kept walking because there was nowhere to go back to. The city glowed with the lives of other people, while his own felt like a dim hallway with no doors. On the other side of town, Maya sat in her corner office as sunset washed the glass towers with bands of amber. Steam curled from her cup of tea while she reviewed the latest reports. Clean numbers, steady growth, a team hitting targets they'd set together. She had built this in small steps and long nights, in quiet study and careful choices. 3 years earlier, she had been an assistant people brushed past. Now she led with a calm that came from doing the work and surviving what it took to get here. A soft knock sounded. "Come in," she said, and the door opened to reveal Richard Hale. He crossed the room with a look that always held a hint of apology these days. "Busy?" he asked, a warm smile tugging the corners of his mouth. "Not for you," she said, closing her laptop. He sat, studying her with a father's wonder and a man's regret. "I still wish I had found you sooner," he said quietly. She met his eyes, her expression gentle. "I know." He hesitated. "Do you forgive me?" There had been a time she thought she never would, when anger felt like armor, but she had learned that carrying anger was a weight no one could help you lift. "I do," she said at last. "You're my family. I don't want to lose more years to resentment." Relief softened his face. "I'm proud of you, Maya," he said. She smiled, a small, steady thing. "I'm proud of me, too." When he left, she stood by the window and watched the city lights blink on like a galaxy, a reminder that beginnings can happen at any hour. Meanwhile, Caleb sat hunched on a bar stool under a neon sign that hummed like a tired bee. The whiskey was cheap and harsh, but it was warm and it was something to hold. He stared at the glass like it might answer questions he should have asked years ago. Time stretched in strange ways when you were stuck. He thought about the day he'd walked away from Maya in that cafe, about the way Ava had replaced his name with a costume, about how quickly people forget you when you can't offer them a shiny door to slip through. He remembered standing in Maya's office, the sun blazing behind her like a crown, and hearing her say, "I don't love you anymore." The words didn't stab, they settled, heavy and true. He had spent years outrunning the person he was, as if distance could erase choices. Now all he had was the echo of his own voice telling someone he loved that love wasn't enough, and the sight of that same person proving love for herself was the only kind that lasts. When he finally stumbled outside, the night air bit his lungs awake. A low purr of an engine drew his eyes as a black car eased the curb, glossy as ink. The door opened and Maya stepped out, the city lights catching on her dress as if they belonged there. Beside her was a man from the restaurant, Ethan Cole, steady, sure, unbothered by cameras or whispers. Ethan offered his hand. Maya took it without hesitation, fingers fitting into his like a promise that didn't need words. Caleb stood in the shadow of a street lamp and watched them walk past, their voices soft, their laughter easy. He didn't call her name. He didn't move. For the first time, he understood that she was never his to keep. She had always belonged to herself, and now she shared her life with someone who knew how to honor that. They disappeared into the night, and the taillights faded like a quiet goodbye. Days became weeks, and the sharp ache inside Caleb dulled into a heavy stone. He tried to find work that matched the titles he used to toss around, but interviews were brief and polite endings came fast. He took small jobs instead. Warehouse shifts, delivery runs, odd tasks where no one asked about resumes, so no one could laugh at his. The work was honest and left him with sore hands and a clearer mind. He didn't post about it. He didn't tell anyone. He just did it because rent didn't pay itself, and life didn't care whether you felt ready to start over. Some nights, when the city settled into its late hush, he walked past a cafe where it had all snapped. He stood across the street and looked through the window at strangers laughing over cheap coffee, and he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, a small, stubborn wish to be a better man than the one who sat at that table years ago. He stopped checking Maya's name on search engines. He deleted old photos he had no right to hold. He packed up the last suit Ava had bought and gave it to a donation bin, sending off a version of himself that didn't fit anymore. Maya, for her part, kept showing up the way she always had. She mentored a young analyst who reminded her of herself. Quiet, curious, unafraid of hard work. She led meetings without raising her voice because respect didn't need to be shouted. She and Ethan took late walks along the river, talking about future plans like two people building a house from the same blueprint. On weekends, she visited her father not in gilded boardrooms but in his living room, where they learned to be family in the simple ways. Sharing takeout, arguing with a smile about movies, laughing at old stories that hurt a little less each time. Sometimes she thought of the girl who once sat in a cafe praying for life to open a door. If she could go back, she would take that girl's hand and say, "Keep going. It gets better. You become someone you can trust. You will not need anyone to tell you that you matter." One evening, as the sun poured honey over the skyline, Maya closed her laptop and stood by the window again. The city below buzzed with lives colliding and parting, with victories and mistakes, with people learning the same lessons at different speeds. She didn't feel triumph so much as peace. She had not won against anyone. She had chosen herself when it counted. The rest had followed. Across town, Caleb finished a late shift and stepped into the cool night, the world quieter than usual. He paused under a streetlight, looked up at the same sky, and for once didn't wish for a different life. He wished for the strength to live this one with honesty. He didn't get Maya back. He didn't deserve to, but he had learned something he should have known all along. Success without character is just noise. Love without respect is just a performance, and leaving someone for money ends up costing more than you can pay. In the end, the truth was simple. Maya thrived not because she chased revenge, but because she chose growth, learned her worth, and kept moving even when it hurt. Caleb lost almost everything, not because fate hunted him, but because of choices he made and the emptiness he mistook for gold. And somewhere between those two stories lies a message worth holding close. The best answer to doubt is becoming so steady, so true to yourself, that the past has no power over your future. If this story reached you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to soul-stirring stories for more heartfelt, inspiring tales. Tap the bell so you never miss a new episode. And remember, your value is never set by people who fail to see it. See you in the next story.